Hello everyone, my name is Harsh and in this session we'll be looking how we can create a Tic Tac Toe game. So this is a 6th session of Flutter 101 Bootcamp and I'm assuming that you have watched all the previous session. So let's get to today's session. So the first thing which I'll be doing is I'll be creating a model for our application or for our data which we'll be storing inside it. So I'll create a new file with the name game_button.dart. So this will be the model for our game button. So all the buttons which we will be using inside our tic-tac-toe game. So I'll import material.dart file. Next I'll make a class named as game button. And inside the class we'll be having various different variables like final ID, the string text, color will also be there, and providing it with a boolean variable so that we can track if it is enabled or not. Now I'll assign a constructor inside it. So the constructor will be providing the values to these whenever we are calling this class from some other part of our code inside our function. I'll rename this to BG and the color will be gray. And I'll set the this dot enable to true. And adding a semicolon here. So this is the basic data model which we'll be using for assigning all the buttons which we'll be having inside our Flutter application or this tic-tac-toe game. Now let's start working on the main file. So this is the basic file or the basic app which is created when we are running our Flutter create method and an app is created out of it. So I'll cut short the code which is not usable in this part of this video. So let's keep the part here intact because it will be giving us error if we are removing things from here, and I'll assign it to null for now. So now let's start working on the variables which we'll be using inside this tic-tac-toe game. So this will be the first thing which we'll be assigning, which is a list of type game button, and the name of the list will be button list. So I am initializing it as of now. I'll be assigning the values to it a bit later. We'll be having player 1 and player 2 here. So in this part of we having player 2 as a computer, and the assignment which you will be having in which you have to make a player 2, like the player 2 will be a real person and you have to code a function according to that. So let's create another variable which will be named as active player. So for defining who the active player is, we'll be having an init state method. So what an init state method is, so whenever we are running our Flutter application or whenever this particular stateful widget is running, the init state method is the first method to be called out, or is the first method which will be running whenever this class or this stateful widget is called out. So whatever we are passing inside it runs first, and then all the other widgets or the widget tree start displaying or start running. So I'll assign the button list variable or the button list which we have created above to do init function. So I'll create the do init function as well. So let's start working on the do init function. So it will be generating a list of type game button and naming it as do init. The player 1 which we have assigned will be set to a list, empty list, player 1. Similarly, we'll be assigning the player 2 as well, and the active player will be set to 1. Next, we will be assigning the values or the buttons inside the variable named as var game buttons. So it will be of type game button, and it will be having list of values. So firstly, we'll pass a game button inside it with the ID of 1. So I'll copy it and paste multiple times, and I'll change the IDs to 2 to 9. And at last we'll return this game button variable. So turning this to capital B. Now next thing which we need to add in this code is that we need to make reset functions. So what reset functions will be doing, so these will be resetting all the values or all the things which we are having inside a Tic Tac Toe game back to their initial states. So I'll code a reset game functions so that the values are set to normal again. So starting, so it will be having a return type of void, so they won't be returning anything. And inside it we'll be checking if navigator dot can pop context, so this generally takes a context, and if it is having the context, so what we will do is we'll pop the context out of it. And we'll be setting the state of button list to back to do init. So the button list will be set to the do init function again, so it will be generating all the buttons from its initial state. Now we'll be creating a function which will be named as play game function. So this function will be helped, or this function will be used for playing the game. So this will be of return type void, and name of this function will be play game function. We'll be passing a game button type to it, and I'll name it to GB, the short form of game button. And in this we'll be setting the state of active player, so we'll be checking if the state of active player is 1, so then we'll be assigning the gb.text to x, and the colors will also be assigned, else we'll be assigning the color and the value of text to 0 or 1, and the active player will be assigned accordingly. So let's set the state. So inside this set state, I'll check if the active player is equal to 1, and if yes, then gb.text will be set to x, and the gb.background color, which was bg I guess, will be set to colors.red, and we'll set the active player to 2. After this, we'll add this inside the player 1 list. And if the condition is not true, then we'll add an else statement to it. So the else statement will be having all this code, but we need to change some values from it. So the gb.text will be changing to 0 in place of x, and gb.background will be changing to black. The active player will be changing to 1, and instead of adding it in player 1, we'll be adding it into player 2. After this else condition, we will be setting gb.enable to true, although it was we will be setting it to false as initially we have assigned it as true. And we will be checking if there is any winner after the game is played. So we will be making another function named as check winner for this. So we will be making this function a bit later, and we'll check if the winner is equals to -1. So we'll be returning some values out of it, and on the basis of those returned values we'll check if the winner is there or not. And we'll have another check here. So we'll see if the button list array, or on the button list, if so we'll pass another function or another method to it. So this is named as dot every. So for every element which is present inside button list, it will be checking the values, or it will be checking the condition. So inside this arrow function, in place of false, I'll pass p dot text. And if this p dot text is not equals to null, then we'll run something. So we'll be displaying a dialog box here, and inside this dialog box we'll be typing the game has been tied. So that in the dialog box we'll be passing the context as context, and we'll be passing the builder here. So let it load. Yeah, so the builder will be taking an underscore. So when we don't want to assign anything, we can pass underscore in place of it, or we are unsure what type of value will be passed, so we assign underscore inside it. And we'll be passing a custom dialog box here. And inside this custom dialog box, what we'll be passing is game tied, and please hit the reset button to start again, and then we'll pass a reset game button or reset game function to it. So let me pass the values to this. So we need to create this, so we'll be working on it a bit later. And the last thing which we'll be passing is a reset game. So the reset game function we have already coded. Let's remove this as of now. And if this condition, or if this condition is set to false, then we'll be having an else statement. And inside the else statement, we'll check if the active player is equals to 2. Then we'll run the function autoplay. So as I mentioned that the second player will be a computer, so the autoplay function will be running for this, else it won't be running anything. So now let's start creating these functions which we have inside this app. So the first thing which I'll be creating is an autoplay function. So the autoplay function will be of a type void. So auto play, and inside this function we'll have a new list which will be named as empty cells. I'll assign it to a list, and we have another list, so it will be generating a list of 3 by 3. So we'll be having 9 items to it, and I'll name it as list, and we'll be generating it through list.generate. We'll be passing the length which is 9 and a function type. So we want to create it way like I equals to I plus 1. So this is how we want to create. Now we'll be having a for statement to loop through the values or items which are present inside this list. So for variable cell ID in list, we'll be performing something. So we'll be having a condition here to check if the player dot contains cell ID or not. So we'll have player 1 dot contains cell ID, and after this we'll be having or if player 2 dot contains cell ID, and after this condition we'll be assigning or we'll be adding the cell ID to this empty cell list which we have created above. So I'll add this here and I'll assign or add the value of the cell ID to the empty cells list. So after this condition is true or after this condition is running, we'll be having some other variables as well. So these values or the things which the computer will be choosing will be on the basis of a random function. So we'll create a random function out of this so that the computer can choose its moves by automatic process. So I'll assign a random with the name R. I'll also assign the random index. So this will be we'll be generating it from the empty list. So we'll be having the list of empty cells and we'll be subtracting it by 1 as the indexing is starting from 0. So we'll be doing it. So I'll name it random index and I'll generate a list. So I'll generate a random number out of it. So r dot next int, and inside it I'll pass empty cells dot length -1. So I named it empty cells by mistake, so let's keep it same. And here random is giving an error, so we need to import dart math. Now the random error will be fixed automatically. Now after this we need to initialize a variable which will be checking if the cell ID is equals to p dot id, and if it is true then it will be like generating or assigning the values, and at last we will be calling the play game function. So it inside the button list so it will be checking the index where. So you can read here why the index where is used. So it returns the first index in the list that satisfied the providing test. So we'll be assigning a test to it, and it will be returning the index of that variable or of that condition wherever the condition is set to true. So I'll add p dot id here. I'll set this element to p, and I'll check if it is equals to cell id, and it will be returning the value if this condition is set to true. And we'll be playing the game if this condition is set to true. We also need to assign this cell id variable. So this cell id variable will be assigned from the empty cells. So we'll be having we'll be getting this random index of item from this empty cells list. We need to make this play game function. So I have already made it, but due to a typo it is not recognizing it. Turning it to capital G. So it has recognized this play game function. Now the thing which we need to make is this check winners function. So I'll start working on it. So this check winners function is returning an integer. So we are assigning it inside this integer variable. So the return type will be set to integer and the name will be equals to check winner. So initially the value of winner will be equals to -1. That is the reason we have assigned a condition above which checks if the value of the winner is equals to -1 or not. Next we will be checking if player 1 list contains, yeah, I need to set it to player 1 list dot contains a 1, and along with it we are passing another condition, and if player 1 dot contains 2 and adding another condition to it, and if player 1 dot contains, so we'll be having another variable which will be equals to 3. So this is basically the values of the boxes. So inside a Tic Tac Toe game you must have seen that there are 3 by 3 boxes, and if a particular box is selected as like all the 3 X's are there in this particular line, then the player 1 is winning, or all the X's are like in this particular line, so the player 1 is winning. So here we are checking the value of that only. So if 1 is there in player 1, so he will be winning. So we will be returning winner equals to 1. We will be setting the value of winner equals to 1. Now we will be having the similar condition for player 2. So we will check if player 2 dot contains 1 or player 2 dot contains 2 or player 2 dot contains 3, then the winner will be set to 2. Now similarly we will be having these values for 4, 5 and 6, and then 7, 8 and 9. If player 1 dot contains 4, 5 and 6, and player 2 dot contains 6, 5 and 4. Now assigning the same condition for 7, 8 and 9. So it will be checking if the particular things are assigned in it or not. And all the 3 conditions must be set to true for the winner to be assigned through this. Now you must have also seen that there are diagonal values also, so we'll assign the diagonal values as well here. So one diagonal is 1, 4 and yeah, so 1, 4 and 7. Then we have this type diagonal as well, so I'll add them as well, copying it and pasting it again. So the first diagonal which we have is 1, 4, 7. The second one which we have is 2, 5 and 8. So adding 1, 4 and 7. The next one which we have is 2, 5 and 8. The next one which we have is 6, 3 and 9. And now assigning the values to the diagonals as well. So the first one which we have is 1, 5 and 9, and the second one is 5, 3 and 7. So 5, 3 and 7, 7, 5 and 3, and the first one which was 1, 1, 5 and 9, 5 and 1. So these are the conditions which will be checked for assigning the value of the winner. Next we will be having another condition, so it will be checking if the winner is equals to -1. So if the value of winner is equals to -1, then it will check. So we need to get inside this if loop by setting this condition to false. So if the value of winner is not set to -1, then it will get inside this condition, and we will check if the winner is equals to 1. And if it is so, then we will be showing a dialog box. So the dialog box will be having the custom dialog box which we need to create. So we'll be creating it in a while. So just a sec. Yeah, so show dialog, and context will be set to context. We'll have a builder which will take an underscore and then an arrow function which will be showing custom dialog, inside which we need to pass player 1. Next we need to pass press the reset button to start again, and we'll be passing the reset game function to this. And adding a semicolon at last. Now if the winner 1 is not winning, then we'll have an else condition for this. So it will be passing the same thing for winner 2, player 2 1, and the rest all the things will be remaining same. Now we need to create this custom dialog function or this custom dialog class. So let's start creating the custom dialog class. So for that I'll make a new file which will be named as custom dialog. So I'll import material dot file from this. We'll have an stateful widget here. So I'll type stf, so it will be providing me with the, so we need to have a stateless widget here. So when we'll be typing stl, it will be providing us with a stateless widget, and there are some values or variables which are passed to this. So let us assign that. So the first one is the title, the second one is the context, the third thing which is here is a void callback. So this is for the calling back of a function. So we are passing a function as well here. So we have added a callback here. The last one is the action text. We'll have a constructor here to assign the values. So I haven't named my class, so I'll name it to custom dialog, and the constructor will be named the same as well, custom dialog. And inside this I'll assign the title to this dot title, context to this dot context, callback to this dot callback, and at last the action text to this dot action text. No, so we'll be assigning the action text to a particular value which will be set to reset. So for the action text we'll be having an list type. So this dot action text will be set to reset. Now we'll be having an alert box here inside this build in place of container. So adding an alert box or alert dialog. And inside this alert dialog we need to pass various different things. So the first one is a title, and inside the title we'll be having a text of, and we'll be passing the title which we have got above inside this particular class. The content will be equal to the content, so in place of context it is content TNTS. So now the content will be equal to the content which will be displayed inside the text, and we'll have some actions. So the actions are the buttons which are passed to it. So inside the action, the first thing which we'll be having is a flat button. The on press will be calling back the function which we have got from this, and we'll also have a child which will be having a text displaying the action text. So the callback is showing us an error, so this needs to be capital B, and turning this to capital B as well. Now going back to the main.dart file and importing the custom dialog here. So it has removed the errors for us. Now let's see. We are having an error here. So in place of the element, we need to pass P here so that this P.text is working fine. Now let's move towards the body part of our application. So I'll remove this floating action widget and the center body which was there, and I'll add a column. Inside this column we'll be setting the main axis alignment to start, and the cross axis alignment to stretch, so it will be stretching the cross axis alignment. We'll have children's assigned to this. So inside the children's, the first thing which we'll be having an expanded to provide the space which is available, and inside this expanded we'll be having a grid view. So the grid view is used to display the elements which are inside the list in the form of a Tic Tac Toe game. So the cross zero game which we have, all of us have played, and we'll be having a builder along with grid view. So we need to pass a grid delegate to it. So grid delegate will be basic silver delegate with fixed cross axis count. So I'll assign that to it, sliver grid delegate with fixed cross axis count, and inside it we'll be passing the variables. So assigning the variables to it. So the cross axis count will be set to 3. Next we'll have the child aspect ratio, so it will be set to 1. So we want the height and width to be same. The cross axis spacing will be set to 9, and the main axis spacing will also be set to 9. Now let's see why an error is showing up here. So it is expecting this, so we'll be providing it with this. Now we need to pass the item builder as well, but before passing the item builder, let's assign a padding inside this, what we can say, the builder. So the padding will be as inserts dot all, the value will be 10. I'll add an item 10, and then I'll add an item count here. So the item count will be equals to the button list count, so it will be equal to the length of button list. And after this I have passed this grid delegate, and next we'll be building the items out of it. So it will be taking context, and along with the context it will also take the index. And next this will be returning a sized box. So in place of these braces I'll be using an arrow function, and I'll return a sized box here. The sized box will be having the width of 100 and height of 100. So rather than equals to, in Flutter we are using colons. So adding some commas for the code to be formatted and saving it. Now after this we are having a child as raised button. So the reason why we are using a raised button, so every element or every grid inside this grid view will be reacting as a raised button. So when a click on this is made, it will be running different functions according to the conditions which we have set. And inside the raised button we'll be providing a padding of 8. So I'll copy this padding from here and assign the padding here. So clicking on it, assigning the padding, the value to 8. Next thing which we'll be adding, and the most important thing which is used inside our raise button, is a on pressed. So we'll be having button list and the value of I will be enabled. So I is basically this thing which we have passed, so it is the index, and if it is enabled, so we'll be checking if the value of this button is enabled or not. And if it is enabled, so we'll be running a function according to that, or we'll be checking the condition according to that. So equals to and this, and on basis of this we'll be running the play game function, and we'll be passing the button list value out of this function. So button list, the index value of I will be passed inside it, adding the and the next condition which should be there is when the condition is set to false, so we'll be passing a null to it. Now let us see why it is showing an error. So it is expecting another bracket here. So removing this, it is working fine as of now. Now we need to add a child to this raised button. So adding a child to it, but before it let me add some comma here, and it will be having a text widget set to it. So the text widget will be displaying button I.bg. So it will be having the color of that .bg, and it will be displaying the text. So there are two different texts which are going to be displayed. So the first one is a X and second one is a 0. So it will be displaying that button list I dot text. The styles will also be added. Text style color will be set to colors dot white for this text, and the font size will be set to 20. Now we'll be assigning some color to this button. So adding the color to the button, so it will be equal to button list, and taking this dot bg, so the color will be equal to the color of the button list variable which is selected through the I index. And then we'll set the disabled color on the basis of the same thing which we have assigned above for color. So I'll copy it and paste it here. And next thing which and there will be another raise button inside this, so it will be basically for resetting the game. So I'll add it, but before this let's save it and see if the things are appearing or not. For now we are having the getter variable null was called on null. Let's hot restart it and see if the app is running fine. So you can see that we have this function, the app displaying some what we can say these boxes, but when we are clicking on it, it is displaying us with an exception. So we'll be dealing with this exception in a while, but before this let's work on the reset or displaying the reset raised button. So it will be having a child of text which will be displaying reset and passing some styles to it. text style will be having the colors dot black, and the font size will be set to 20. And after it, inside the raise button, I'll provide a color. So the color will be set to colors dot red, and padding will also be there. Of value 20, and on press will be set to reset game. Let's see if it displaying the button. So you can see here that it is displaying a cross and 0. By clicking on this button, it is displaying a exception in this debug terminal. So let's deal with it. But when we are clicking on this reset button, it is resetting all the values back to normal. So now let's see why we are having an exception here. So the exception says that the list dynamic has no instance method contains with matching matching argument. So let's see. So we are having an error inside the check winner. This is showing us an error. So we have forgotten to return the value from this check winner function. So after this else condition is there, we need to return the winner also. Now let's see if it works fine or not. It is. Let me restart it. So I'll quickly close the app and try to rerun it again. So I have opened the app again, and after this I have restarted the application. So by clicking this restart button, so let's see if the app works now or not. So whenever I'll be clicking on a particular button, it will be running, or it will be making a computer move by selecting a particular box all by itself. So when I have clicked on this, so X is my side and 0 belongs to the computer's side. When I have clicked on this, the computer has also made its move by clicking automatically or selecting this raised button automatically. So when I click on this, it will make its own move by clicking on this. And when I'll make or click on this, so you can see that it has made a diagonal. So it is showing me an alert box saying that player 1 has won this game. So when I'll click on this reset, it will be resetting all the values. And similarly, I can click on various different boxes here, and on the basis of this, it will be making its own move and then checking the result through this check winner function. So it will be checking a result, and if the winner is me or the winner is computer, it will be returning that value, and then the value will be set automatically, or the value will be assigned automatically to the functions, and then it will be displaying us with an alert box. So you can see that this time the computer has a diagonal and it has displayed as that player 2 has won. So this is how you can create a tic-tac-toe game inside your Flutter, and you have an assignment for this task particularly. So you have to add the player 2 mode here. So in place of the computer making its move, so you have to add one more function in which you will be waiting for player 2 to make its own move. So this is a particular assignment for this session, and revamping or talking about briefing this particular session. So in this session we have basically made a tic-tac-toe game, which is your cross zero game, which you must have played in your childhood. So basically clicking on a button and cross and zero appearing. So we have made the computer version, so a computer is playing along with us, and we have added a reset button to reset the values. So this was it for this session, and if you have any doubts, then you can ask your doubts on Discord. So I'll be available for a while to answer your doubts related to this particular session.